glad you're here on another cold Thursday morning, although it's a little better than it was last week, and certainly not as bad as last weekend. So, my name is Chris Bacon, Dean of our ARF Leadership Lab. We're glad you're here. Our last class of our winter session all about analytics, or I should say last formal class. Don't forget we have our graduation ceremony in 2 weeks at Turner. That'll be at the Time Warner Center. It'll be an evening session, so it'll be 5 o'clock. And I'll say more about that at the end of our session today. But I'm really excited to introduce today our Professor Shelley Ivanko. So Shelley and I have shared history in that I'm a Colgate alum, you're current Colgate, or as they'd say in Mexico City, Colgate. Because if anybody, I don't know how many folks have worked in the personal oral care space. So if you know, especially if you go in Latin America, people don't say that they're going to buy toothpaste. They say they're going to buy Colgate. Because like in the U.S., where Kleenex equals tissues, in Latin America, toothpaste equals Colgate. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is.
It's a lot of fun. But I'm really fortunate and glad Shelley can join us today. She's going to share with us what she's been able to do at Colgate the past 4 years to help bring analytics to life. And share with us the successes, the challenges, and really how do you go about taking all the things, all of the tools, all of the theory, all of the big data and such that we've discussed throughout our winter session, and how do you put it in practice? And how do you use all of the insights to help drive growth in the business? Now, Shelley's been doing this, well, I will say she's been doing it for a while.
Entire life. Long time.
She started in 97 in working in batteries. Was with Duracell when it was still part of Gillette, doing forecasting and analytics. And then when Procter bought Gillette in 2003 or 4? 2004. Shelley ended up splitting her time between Connecticut and Cincinnati until, fortunately, the folks at Colgate said, hey, why don't you come join us? So she's been there since 2012 and has been helping drive analytics in the Colgate world in some 70 countries probably. It's quite a expansive experience. So, if you will, please join me in welcoming Shelley Ivanko to our stage today.
Cool. You're going to sit right there, huh?
I am.
Okay.
I'm also probably going to jump on.
Okay. So, as Chris had mentioned, I'm really just going to talk about how do we make sure that we get really comfortable with advanced analytics and really leverage this stuff to help us improve our share and profitability. And I just want to really take the mystery out of it. So the agenda is really just talking about background and objectives, go through the MMM overview, so what it can and can't do, price and promotion, because it's not just about MMMs, right? You can get a high-level thing, but it's also about the pricing aspect and the promotion aspect. We'll do a summary, and then we'll do a Q&A, and my plan is, now if you guys have questions, just stop me. If you got some concerns, let's make this really interactive, okay? So, our goal today is really about demystifying advanced analytics, making sure that you guys feel really comfortable when you walk out of here, and you feel like you've got a plan when you really want to start putting stuff into place. And really, it's, how do I understand the importance of leveraging advanced analytics, and what are the things I need to consider as I start to roll this stuff out? So why do we do marketing mix models, right? A lot of us spend a lot of money in either the media or the promotion space, right? Either millions or billions of dollars. And we want to make sure that what we're doing is that we're getting the biggest bang for our buck. We want to optimize our spend. We're always under a lot of pressure to say, how do I do things more efficiently? How do I drive share? I can't expand my budgets, whether it's media or in store, so how do I optimize it? And the best way to really do that is through marketing mix models. Okay? It's a really, really useful tool. So how does it work? And again, a lot of you already probably know this, but it uses advanced statistical tools, so regression models. It pulls in 2 to 3 years worth of data, sales information, right? So all the different types, and it pulls in all the other components that have to be quantified. So things like pricing, trade promotions, our media components, so whether it's print, digital, TV. It pulls in distribution, it pulls in competitive effects. It takes all these things and it develops a relationship about that, and it helps quantify each one of the different contributions to say how important are each one of these different things to my business. Okay? And then ultimately, it identifies the sales drivers, so what are the right levers that I really need to push to continue to grow my business. And then it gives me the ROI, so if I've got the spend information that's associated with each one of these different buckets, I can then understand for every dollar I spend, what am I getting back on print? What am I getting back on TV? What am I getting back on trade? Right? Because you really want to make sure that if you're spending $1, you'd like to get more than $1 or at least $1 to break even. It doesn't happen very often. Sometimes it does, but it's a benchmark to strive for, so it's really important. And then finally, I think the most powerful thing about MMMs is the simulation capability. So how do I create what-if scenarios to find out, I might get there might be a decision that's made that says I've got to cut my media budget by 5%. What do I do then? How do I optimize that spend to make up for that lost volume? Right? Or if I want to change my mix. I want to do a little bit more in digital because I think it's really working well for me. It's a hot idea for folks. If I change that mix, again, what will it do for my volume performance? How can MMMs help you? As I mentioned, it can identify the key drivers of sales, right? Marketing and external factors. External factors being such things as if I got a brand and there's some seasonality. How important is seasonality for me? I can say when I worked, in the battery business, November, December were huge, right? Because everybody's buying gifts and everything, so it was like 30 to 40% of our sales. So we knew we had to win December and we had to have everything going on in December to get a synergistic effect. So make sure we had a lot of media going on, that we had a lot of in-store promotions happening, just to take advantage of that seasonality. What are the sales changes due to? One of the really cool things that MMMs do is they take your volume from this year and last year, and they decompose it. So if I'm up 5%, that's great, but what drove that 5%? So it'll look at all the different pieces that I described earlier, whether it's promotional activity, it's gains in distribution, it's increased GRPs, and it'll quantify each one to say how much. So say promotion, we did a whole bunch more promotion. Maybe of that 5% growth, 2 points of that growth came from promotional activity. Another part might be from increased GRPs. We had a new campaign, and we put in more GRPs. So it helps quantify this. So again, the organization can start making some really important decisions about those levers I want to push to drive my performance. What's the optimal mix of marketing spend to drive sales and profit? Again, we get the information, it's spit out from the models, and we look at what's really driving our performance, but it's how do I even make it better? How do I continue to improve my performance, to optimize that spend, whether it's shifting stuff from a little bit out of TV, where I know I can get the biggest reach, but maybe I need to extend more into digital. Or I know I have a new product, and I know that print and digital work really well for that new product, for new product launches. I might need to take a little bit out of TV again and put it into print and digital to help introduce that new product. How can we improve the delivery of media? Again, so it's how do I think about getting more efficient? So do I have the opportunity to go from 30s to 15s? Sometimes I might lose some effectiveness when I go from a 30 to a 15 in terms of the absolute volume. But if I'm looking at my ROI, so the cost, the efficiency side, I could make that up in terms of my cost per GRP are down, and typically what it does is it increases my overall ROI. But how do I balance that right mix? And again, the importance of the what-if simulations, right? So how do I go from insights, what I learn now, to foresight? So I create those what-if simulations to say, if I were to change some of the things, what's going to happen in the future? And that's a really, really powerful tool.
So we were talking. So How many folks watched the Super Bowl? Yeah? Do you remember an ad for from Colgate? No? You want to talk about what it was?
Yeah, it was really actually almost at the end, right? So it wasn't like in the middle and everybody's all excited about this. It was the first time that we decided that we were going to put something on that really just talked about Colgate and the equity, right? The importance of saving water. So, it just kind of showed a guy standing up in front of his bathroom sink, and he had the water running, and he's brushing his teeth. And it brought in other folks from around the world who were struggling to get water. And it was just about, what? Every time you're going to, go to brush your teeth, make sure you don't leave the water running, because it saves millions and millions of gallons of water. And we know we've got water scarcity issues around the world. So it was more about thinking about that, like a public service message versus go out and buy our toothpaste. And so far, about 70% of the responses have been really good around. It was really nice to see an ad that was about a public service, versus buy more toothpaste. So, and we've done things, right now we're in the middle of looking at, how effective that was in market in terms of driving sales performance.
Yes. Aside from finding a different way of connecting with the consumer and drive sales, is there a conscious rebranding effort or branding effort in Colgate to associate with more issue resolution as opposed to just being a product?
Yeah, absolutely, especially with millennials, right? Like you guys, everybody, it's about a purpose, right? And we just don't want to be about our product. We want to be associated with good things, good things for the environment, good things for people just in general. So there is, even when in my old days, my Procter days, it was the same thing too. How do you build that, that equity? And, and it helps reinforce brand health as well.
Shelley, is there any preliminary insight you can share from the effectiveness of the Super Bowl?
All I know right now is what we've seen so far on Facebook, and those kind of things. So from social media, that 70% of the responses have been good. There's been some there, you usually can't please everybody, but we're really happy with the fact that 70% of the people thought it was a good message for us to be delivering.
So how do you think, talk about Facebook feedback.
Mm-hmm.
How are you thinking about integrating that Facebook feedback into your marketing mix models?
Well, we do. We have a lot of campaigns that happen.
Right.
We have a Facebook page, and we take the absolute impressions, and those get fed in. And so far, we've seen some pretty good results leveraging Facebook. And we do it with a whole bunch of different things too, not only just in the MMMs, but just understand what are the right verbiage out there that really resonates with our consumers. How do we take that and maybe reinforce that in our advertising or in our print messaging, whatever it happens to be. But we are pulling in all the clicks. The other important thing is to think about is to need to balance between short-term and long-term benefits of spending, your spending decisions. So it's really about thinking about how do I extend, what's the extended lifetime value of bringing in a new consumer? How do you keep them in your franchise? What are the things? So some of the things that we're doing today, right, about equity advertising, doing things that are more, public offerings and public concern, to keep them drawn in, having good advertising. Opportunity costs. What's the impact of not executing programs while our competitors do? A lot of times we're under pressure. Our sales aren't up, and all of a sudden we've got a fourth quarter budget cut. We've got to cut media spend by 10%. The nice thing in the MMMs, and it's not good, but it is good. You can quantify. Oh my God, if I had to go dark in the fourth quarter, what kind of sales impact is that going to have on me? What kind of negative impact? So I'm preparing myself. And the organization to say, right, we're delivering it, we're going to cut this down, but, from a market share and a volume standpoint, we're going to be negatively impacted. How do I think about, brand equity, maintaining brand presence in the consumer's mind? So that's really, again, about having that constant message out there, right? Creating that awareness and making sure that you got a lot of product on shelf so that when you're creating that awareness, they can go and buy it. Retailer relationships, and that's really all about distribution and making sure that they see that we're out there, we're creating the awareness, we've got the right mix of products on shelf. We know from all marketing mix studies, no matter who does it, distribution's king. The number one thing you have to have is distribution in the store, right? So if anything you want to take away in terms of some of the key drivers is make sure you've got distribution on shelf and you've got those power SKUs out there, because it's your power SKUs that are going to really drive all your volume.
Wait, let's
Yeah.
stop and define power skew.
A power skew is one that, sorry,
It's okay.
if you're looking at your distribution and your sales rate, right, and you're looking at how much sales is coming from each one of your SKUs, it's obviously your biggest SKUs, right? So it's the one that's driving the most amount of volume. And a lot of times, you're always under pressure at the shelf to say, I might have to put a new product in. How do I substitute, something? I don't want to take it away from one of my high volume SKUs that are driving so much sales. I want to look for something else. I'd love to get it from competition, but that doesn't happen. Typically, you have to get it from yourself, so you look for the lower performing SKUs. But those power SKUs are the ones that really help drive your overall total market share. Okay, so it's a really big, important opportunity. Yes?
When you're doing the analysis, do you factor in competitive data within that?
What?
Do you factor in competitive
Oh, yes.
information?
Everything gets built into the model. We pull in not only our information, but all competitors' information. Not only do we pull in, their sales data, but we look at all their causal support, so what kind of TPR activity, what kind of display activity, what kind of competitive GRPs are out there. All that has an impact on us. So everything gets in, and a lot of times, you might want to consider is not only when you're modeling your own brands, modeling competition, so that you can really start to understand their strategies. What are the big drivers that are, affecting their volume, either positively or negatively? And it's a nice way to say, how do I compete with them in the marketplace then? So, I know again, some of the marketing mix modeling stuff, it can be quite expensive depending on how many brands you want to run. But if you've got a core competitor out there, and say you're only in one really big market, really consider running a model for that competitor so that you can just understand their strategies. Did I answer that?
Oh, yeah.
MMMs can help you with, because this is really important. It can't predict the impact of factors that have not occurred before, right? So if you've got a new marketing vehicle, it can't do it, right? Because it's relying on historical information to help inform the models. So, or a new competitor comes into place. It can't really, it can't predict that, right? So it's got to happen in the market because it takes into the 2 to 3 years of historical data. It can't predict the impact of a major shift in strategy, right? So all of a sudden I've got all this extra money and I'm now going to, increase my spend by 2x or 3x in the media space. Well, it's never happened before, so, it can't predict it. Unlikely, but, that would be really nice, right, if we had that extra money.
Yeah.
Explain why the creative copy did or didn't work. It can't do that, but what we do know is that, copy is really important. Copy quality, when I look at the overall volume that comes from TV, and in that little pie, about 2/3 of that volume comes from copy quality, right? And then the rest is from execution. So how many weeks I have on air, how many, what's the weekly weight I've been leveraging. So copy quality is important. You can't bring it in and really analyze it, but what you can do is talk about the diagnostics and making sure that your strategic partner, whoever it is that's running your MMMs, has that information to say, I ran a new creative, I didn't have good, brand recall, I see it in the market when I look at my ROIs and the volume effectiveness, it's fallen off. And it just really makes for a richer conversation because the model can't explain everything. And that's why it's really important to make sure that you pull in other diagnostics that either you in, the research space or whatever, talk about, or you have it, give it to your strategic partner so they're also voicing it over when they're going through the MMM results.
Shelley, how do you choose what messages are sent at that point?
In terms of?
In the copy or in the creative? You've spoken about there's hierarchies of different factors here, but are you also pulling in an understanding of the market, how they choose brands?
Sort of understanding the consumer decision process.
We don't really talk about it there so much. It's more about talking about just like the copy quality performance and stuff that is really linked to it. I'm sure there's more conversations that will happen around brand choice and stuff. The last thing you can't do is write the marketing strategy and plan for you, right? That's what you guys have to do. So, but everybody thinks you're just going to get this little magic thing. So
yeah, Sam said it's damn. We want the silver bullet.
Yeah.
But how do you? So let's talk for a minute about what we can learn from MMMs to inform the strategy.
Yep.
What is it that we should be focused on?
Well, I think when you think about the marketing, the contributions, right? So if you've got a particular brand, say you've got a whole bunch of brands out there, and you're trying to understand how do I drive my entire portfolio, right? So what works really well for me in that space? I might say that I've got a brand A, it's TV. That's the biggest volume contributor. So I really would want to focus more of my efforts still in that TV space. But brand B might be really responsive to digital, and maybe it's because they pull in millennials. There's a younger crowd who likes to go and look at videos on demand and all that kind of stuff. So we look at this kind of information to help inform how do I reshape my marketing spend, and my media plans, and it does differ by sub-brands. Okay. The other thing people start to think about, if you're a global business, right, and you're operating in quite a few countries, like us, we're in 70 plus countries, right? So you have to pick and choose because you don't have endless amount of money to spend for MMMs everywhere, right? So we wanted to come up with some certain guidelines in terms of how do I pick and choose the markets that I want to go after to run these MMMs. So one of the big things that we talk about is the fact that you really want to do them in countries that matter most, right? So it's either your biggest amount of media spend or trade spend, so stuff below the line, or and typically they kind of go together hand in hand, or it's one of my biggest markets, from a global perspective. So if the U.S. is 50% of my sales, I really want to make sure on a global basis that I'm looking at the MMM. I'm running MMMs or price and promotion studies in that space because it's so important to my overall global business that I want to make sure that I'm really understanding that and driving a lot of performance. Okay, so you try to think about, again, globally, if I had to pick and choose, what are the markets in each one of my different divisions that matter most to me, and I'm putting the most amount of spend, and that's the ones how you should prioritize. The other thing, though, is if there's a strategic market, so it might be a smaller market to you in terms of overall net sales or gross sales, but say a new competitor came in, and they're killing you now, and you're like, oh my God, I need to know, how do I respond to this? What do I do? So a lot of times you can run an MMM in that space to understand, new competitors come in, what are the drivers, what's driving their volume, and how do I make adjustments in my marketplace dynamics to help stabilize my share performance. Okay, or it could be where there's a market that I'm thinking about, it's white space, I've never been there before, but I really want to understand it. So I'll get a good indication in terms of what are the drivers. I'll look at some competitors that are out there now and say, what are those right vehicles that I need to get into to really help drive the performance of my brand as I enter that market.
Have you run into situations where it might be an important market, but the data may not be available?
Yeah, everybody's always worried about data rich versus not data poor countries. The good news is a lot of the suppliers out there, they can leverage not only Nielsen data, but they can take your own POS information, right, and leverage that. So if I'm in a market and I don't have really good syndicated data, or it only covers half of the market, but I've got my POS data, they'll take both, and they'll pull both pieces in to give you a more, a richer analysis. And the old way, before we really had consumption data, truly, they could actually even do it off of shipments. It's not the best way because it's not sell through, but there are a lot of options, and data is so important. I'm glad you brought that up because, if you don't have good, clean data, good, clean spend information, good, clean GRP data, and you're making huge decisions on this stuff. It's like garbage in, garbage out, right? So you really have to be like a little watchdog as you embark on one of these studies to make sure that the information that you're getting from all your different partners, because you're actually relying on a lot of people. You're relying on your media partners to get all your GRP information. You're relying on finance to make sure that all that spend information is correct. You're relying on your sales force to help bring in like promotion calendars. It's a lot of work. And there's a lot of data touch points that you just have to make sure that they're really, really, really clean. And not that you can't go back and make adjustments, but you have to be a little watchdog, and you have to make sure that these folks that are joining along this little MMM journey or price and promo journey, so your media folks or your finance folks, kind of are part of part of it from the very first time that you have a kickoff meeting and you talk about the fact that I think I'm gonna do we're gonna do an MMM, this is what it's about, and here's your role in helping to bring this all to life. And it's important because not only do you have their buy-in to help and get the right information, but when you need to gain alignment on certain recommendations that you want to, present to senior management that says this is what we want to do in the marketplace now based on these learnings, everybody's aligned. And it makes it a lot easier if you have them involved from the beginning. Yes.
It's not too broad a question. How have the models and the data flow evolved in recent years? Categories and sources increasing.
Yeah, well, as we get more and more new, whether it's new media vehicles, so how do we make sure that we're capturing digital and we're breaking that apart, versus search versus, video on demand? How do we make sure that we are looking at getting more granularity and more real time? So in a lot of places, it's like, I can't wait a whole year to get another answer, right, on my MMM. I've implemented my recommendations. So there's a big push around making sure that I'm capturing whether it's the Facebook, social media components, as well as getting things more real time. So you know what, I just had an advertisement on TV. I need to understand, do I want to continue with that trade? Was it good or bad? And I have the fourth quarter where I can actually make some adjustments. So people will think about running, their marketing mix models on a more real-time basis. So, constantly being refreshed so that they can make those adjustments quicker.
That's
Yes.
actually what I was going to ask, is how often do you recommend running?
Again, if it's the very first time you're going to do it, I would run my annual report, and get the big thing, get everybody comfortable with that kind of information, and that's really important about building credibility of the tool. Nice thing is most times what people thought, what their gut was telling them is actually validated with the models, and that's the kind of nice way to phrase it. Say, hey guys, everything we thought we were doing that was right actually is coming through on the model. So it's validating what our gut intuition was telling us. But if you've got an urgency because you are making adjustments, you've got a new campaign out there, or if you got a new product and you really want to push it, consider you can either do quarterly updates, you can do biannual, depending on when you think you're going to make adjustments to like your media calendar. So, but a lot of people are moving into the more real time, so quarterly or even monthly updates, just because they're getting comfortable with the information and they need to react more quickly. Any other questions? Yes.
I might be jumping
Well,
ahead. So
ask me a
please.
question I can answer.
Oh, I think I can. How do you evaluate how successful a model's been?
Well, the nice thing is what we do is, and we're going to talk about this after, is you don't want to do one and done, right? So you really like to be able to say, here's what the model told me, here's the recommendations, I've actioned these recommendations, now what does it tell me in the marketplace, right? And that's really, really important to be able to say, here was my situation, I don't know, it told me that I needed to increase, my weekly weights on my TV, and because I didn't have enough spend behind it, I needed to drive more continuity. I did that in the marketplace. I implemented the recommendation, and I either refreshed my MMM and it's showing, oh, by the way, I've seen an improvement in my ROI for TV. I've seen more volume coming through on TV. I've seen an increase in my share. So we try to make sure that as we refresh year over year, that we're always showing, here's what the recommendations that we put in last year. Put a nice checkbox next to the ones that we did, and here's the in-market results. Here's the volume that we actually got for this stuff. Because you really want to make sure that you're building validations, right? And building that credibility so that people want to leverage these tools. And this is, just really kind of going to this point in terms of striving for ongoing MMM programs. Again, first year, what do I get from it? I understand, my ROIs, and I get the business insights, I get the, volume drivers, so what's really driving my overall business? Is it TV, is it trade? I get those recommendations, and I can deliver scenarios and simulations. That's year one. Year two, or ongoing, is really about how do I track that performance and start validating, right? So again, I'm looking at those recommendations and saying, I put those recommendations into play. What is the model now telling me that I'm getting volumetrically? Or did it impact my share positively? It's really important. And the nice thing is you start to get really comfortable with this data, so you I'm sorry, yeah.
So, sorry, can you elaborate a little bit on how you measure the success of the campaign? You mentioned like the volume of TV, like volume of what? Like,
It's the sales volume that's associated with each different campaign. So depending on if you give, depending on what you give your M&M supplier, like we like to look, at all the different types of creatives, right? So what is each creative delivering from us, not only from a volume impact, so consumer sales performance, how much is associated, how much sales is going through on TV, what is the ROI that I'm getting on it, right? So I've had to spend with that certain creative, and so if I look at that, my incremental volume that's generated and you divide your spend, you come up with an ROI, right? So what
you're
you're
taking how many times a commercial was seen on a particular channel and mapping that to the amount of sales within that range?
it's all linked to GRPs, right? And the absolute number of weeks on air. And a lot of times what you'll find is, one of the recommendations that might come out is I've got, like 4 creative copies that I've got out there right now. I might see that, 4 creative copies is too much. I'm starting to see that the volume that's associated with each one of those copies continues to drop. And it might be because I'm overwhelming the consumer, I'm diluting my message. So how do I think about, finding that right creative copy and the right mix of copy that I want to leverage to maximize my performance? We also look at the absolute number of weeks on air, because a lot of times what we have seen, around, the world, and I'm not, this is just in general, is that, continuity is really important, and that I want to make sure that I'm striving for maybe more weeks on air at lower weekly weights, because a lot of times we're oversaturated. The markets are, the models are telling us we should be at 60 to 80 GRPs per week, and we're running things at 200. It's like, oh my God, I've got, for every week, that I'm running at 200, I could be adding on another 2 or 3 weeks if continuity is really important for me. So it really does help you deliver, in the execution component.
And I think, one of the things, Shelley, we should stop here for a minute because
Yeah.
I should say our class has folks with experience in B2C work, B2B, in service industries and such. And so I think it's a nice place to stop for a second and maybe open a discussion because you and I know sales. We know what goes through a Walmart. And maybe we should get to, so how would we translate what that Walmart dependent variable would be in a B2B environment or a B2C environment? I throw the question out to the group. What do folks think? What would you use for a dependent variable at IBM?
A dependent variable being how we measure the campaign.
What's that key performance indicator you might consider?
I mean, I'm a sales, analytic marketing salesperson. It's always going to be by point of sale, how much product was sold.
Okay. Yeah.
You could also measure the incoming interest, not necessarily conversion to sales, but you would look at what are the leads that you are generating, because the whole idea of it is to generate leads and then fill the funnel basically. So you're looking at how much of your Salesforce pipeline is coming from what marketing channel. Yeah,
that's a really interesting thought too, and that's probably not something we've dealt with a lot in our experience.
The quality of those leads.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're just generating.
Yeah, sales qualified leads basically.
Right.
If you have an inbound funnel, you can look at the interaction while you're marketing on the different stages of that.
That's a really good point. I think one of the things we're talking about, and I know that we've done this over the years, is how do you take the best practices we've developed in the CPG world and start applying it in other industries and other verticals and such.
Absolutely. But in that instance, it's really important to start thinking about how do I tap into my strategic partners, so the people who might want to run my MMMs or my price and promotion models, tap into their expertise to say, what are the right data inputs that I need that's going to be best for my business so that I can really understand what's driving my business.
That's key. And the whole social media, there's all this unstructured text now, and that's what we see. It's hard to get that point of sale data, build profiles on your customers, and then ingest
Yeah.
social and all these new data sources that really help with that kind of profiling and understanding.
Which comes back to what you were saying earlier about garbage in, garbage out. If the data's not good,
Yeah.
doesn't matter structured or unstructured.
Yeah, and if for that case, if and the thing that is really good with strategic partners is they'll help you think about that scope. So if you realize, you know what, I can't do something on a national basis. I just can't. I don't have all that information, but I really have I'm honed in on when we'll use Walmart as an example.
Yeah.
I've got all that Walmart information, and that's like one of my biggest customers. I really want to understand them, so they'll run a customer mix for you that says, give me all that information, whether it's their retail sales and everything else, because I really want to hone on that. They'll guide you away from doing things where you're not really going to drive a lot of value, because the bottom line is they want to make sure that you are getting value from this stuff. So rely on them to help you build that scope and give you that list of data requirements that are really going to make that model robust, that you're going to have enough variables in there to really capture what's going on in your business.
I have a question actually related to the B2B side, and I was thinking about what you asked. One of the other things that usually happens when there are tertiary marketing efforts that are going in, aside from the direct sales efforts, is change in mindset or an acceleration towards the next step. So someone who was previously agnostic about your product suddenly hears about it from a different channel and now is willing to move to the next step or willing to close the deal. Is there any way of measuring that in the CPG side?
It all depends. I mean, what we try to do is, I don't think it would really pull through on the models because there's not enough. The beauty about the models is that you really need a lot of level of granularity, and they like to see like either weekly sales and things like that to really get the difference in all these different measures so that they could really quantify them. But I think what's important is, how do you take that information that you might have, whether it's a study that you have that says we're starting to see an increase in penetration, we've seen that there's been some outlet shifting, all that kind of information could be just voiced over to say we can't explain everything, we are seeing an uptick, we've tried to kind of quantify, but there might be some unremaining information in the database that they just can't quantify. And it might be because of your measured change in strategy, and you're pulling people in from different sources, and they've done some outlet shifting.
Would that be how we would measure the success of the Super Bowl campaign?
Did you have a question? Because I know you.
Yes. I was wondering, you talked a lot about sort of the partners you work with for MMs. And I'm wondering, coming from an agency perspective, do agencies have any role to play in that versus like a Millward Brown? And if they don't, what role can agencies play? Is there like a sort of light version of this, or just in your experience?
Well, agencies play a really big role in terms of making adjustments to the MMMs. We partner with them from the get-go, right? Because it's all about how do you guys take this stuff and really help us build more efficient and more effective media plans, right? So we rely on our media partners to come in and make sure from the very beginning they're in the kickoff meeting, they understand what the goals are in terms of when we're running these marketing mix modelings, what's really important to us. You guys have to provide all that information in terms of here's the right GRPs, here's what your actualized media plan looks like. Then, based on that, and we run the analysis and we come up with our recommendations, we have to align to make sure that we're taking that stuff with you, our media partners, and making the adjustments to our media plans, right? Because we can't do it without you. We could put together all those recommendations, but unless you guys are going to implement and do the execution, it's falling on deaf ears.
I think Daniel, you have a question.
I'm sorry, I can't see you.
See, it's the corner is so
It's the
corner is
I
so
can't
cozy.
see you.
But if you were helping choose like a marketing mix modeling vendor, what would be some of the key questions you would want to ask and to understand like best practices and the answers I guess you'd want to get?
Yeah, well, I think what's really important is obviously their experience, and the different types of industries that they've worked in, to understand that, to look for that kind of relationship where, again, it's experience, so that the clients that they've had or have, it's what kind of different types of analyses can they do? Are they looking to make sure that they're offering a blend of MMM? So, I like the fact that, some of our suppliers, we don't just do a full MMM. We'll do components of it. So if I really only want to understand my media, because that's the only thing that's important to me, right? Because I've changed my whole campaign, whatever. I can do just a media effectiveness model, right? So it's what kind of offerings do they have? What kind of support do they offer you? Are they really good business partners so that they're not going to just run the stuff and leave you alone, right? So you want to make sure that they're on this journey with you. They're going to help you train your folks, right? To make sure that everybody in the organization, all across functional partners, so whether it's finance or it's, your marketing guys, your sales guys, they all understand the fundamentals of, marketing mix modeling or price and promo so that it can help implement the recommendations. So it's how do I pick a partner that's going to be on that journey with me from the first day all the way through the end, guide me in terms of developing the scope so that I'm thinking about that and helping me form the right business questions. Because you know what? If you don't yet ask the right business questions, from the beginning, then you can miss out on half of what the analysis can really offer. So that's what you want. You want somebody who's going to be a partner all the way through. Make sure that you're asking the right business questions. Make sure that they're going to help train your organization so that everybody feels empowered to drive the insights into action, and to have the foresight to say what's coming down the pipe when I start to look at different types of media. How do I, think about attribution modeling or whatever? What are the next new things as I move through this journey?
And just to follow up, are there also certain type of methodology type questions that you should be looking for to understand if they're a good vendor or not?
You know what, methodology, it's kind of standard. They're regression models, so it's more about your data inputs and whether they could be, how can they make sure that you're going to be able to capture them correctly to put into the model. So it's more around that.
I want to come back to that just for one minute because
Yeah.
I'll add another example from my experience in the wine industry. So wine, unlike toothpaste, is not well covered by a lot of the syndicated services, IRI, Nielsen's, and so forth. So we had to then create our own data using survey information. So a lot of it was brand awareness, brand intent, likelihood to buy. And we were fortunate enough because we were doing continuous brand tracking. So we would interview 15,000 consumers in the U.S. every year. But that was the scale you needed in order to be able to run the kind of models that would actually make sense of it. And it comes back to the point as well when you talk about the methodologies. We got to think about the basics of regression. Regression is looking for differences, and you've got to have enough. You've got to have enough variation and enough data over time, because of the time series analysis, to be able to get meaningful insights out of it, right?
Yep. And so to that point, when you were in the wine industry, did you also leverage your distributor shipment information to help inform? Because you really didn't have a true consumption number. You had your shipments. So is that what you leveraged?
And that's exactly what we did. So we used a combination of survey, shipments, and where we had scan information. So it was, and again, the alcohol beverage business is so fragmented, and there's so many regulations. So we could have scan data out of certain retailers like Walmart, but even for Walmart, we didn't have everything because they couldn't sell wine in every state. So there were certain states in which they did business in which we had no information. So it's tricky.
Yeah. And again, that's why you rely on your strategic partners, right, to help understand what kind of data do you actually have available, and then they'll determine what will work and what won't work.
And you're working with channels right now, I'm guessing, outside of the U.S., particularly in developing markets where it must be really difficult. I'm thinking like the Sari Sari stores in the Philippines.
Yeah, no, it's hard. I mean, you have to get creative. Sometimes you use your consumption numbers where you have consumption data, so the Nielsen information, and then there are certain outlets where you have to rely on shipments. So how do you do maybe a blended model that looks at both to capture the full coverage of a particular market. And this I just wanted to really bring up. This is a real example, right? But what it's talking about is when I've done the program year over year over year, and I've implemented a lot of the recommendations. This particular, manufacturer had 4 brands that they were running MMMs for. They were implementing the recommendations, and this is just looking at their trended ROI performance over time. And you can see that they continue to improve with their ROIs. And this is a total ROI that brings in not only media, but also the trade component, which just says, you know what, when you really do make the adjustments, this is the proof in the pudding that says, I'm getting more than, for every dollar that I'm putting in, I'm getting more than my dollar back. And I'm seeing that improvement. Overall, the franchise went from a total portfolio from a 0.84, right? So for every dollar I'm spending, I'm getting 84 cents back, to now, I'm getting $1.54, right? So 54 more cents, a 54% increase on, a dollar that I'm spending. And it's all because, they're implementing those recommendations. They really does help. And that's the kind of stuff that you want to be able to take back to senior management to say, I've made these adjustments. I am starting to see an improvement in my ROI, whether it's, I've made the adjustments in TV, whether it's weekly weights, or I've got better copy in, and I know that from my, my copy test scores, or I've made adjustments, on the trade side. What am I seeing? I've eliminated some of those promo packs, and I'm doing some other things, and I'm actually seeing a nice improvement in my share performance. The other thing is I can't afford to do a lot of countries, right? Because I've got a limited budget, but I've done some, right? And I want to be able to apply that learning across different markets. What you can do is develop meta learning, right? And meta learning is just saying I've got some consistent learning around the world. So, I've done them in 5 countries, and those 5 countries are really big to me. They're important. They account for maybe 50% of my global business. I've seen consistencies in the media key findings. So maybe one of them is continuity is really important for us. No matter what we do, we want to strive for continuity, right? I want to make sure that I got more weeks on air. And maybe it might also tell us that, the average weekly weight should be around this range, 60 to 80 GRPs. Well, that kind of stuff you can put into guidelines so that a country that currently can't afford to do an MMM can leverage that learning to know, what, I'll probably make a really smart decision by using this informed, consistent learning that I've got from around the world. And not only is it from our MMM stuff, but we also rely on our strategic partners to say, you've got a lot of industry-wide knowledge out there. Tell us a little bit more, too, in terms of what you're seeing in the digital space. What are you seeing, what we see, in terms of ROI performance and effectiveness. But what are you seeing out there that we should consider as benchmarks and reinforce in our guidelines that we're creating? So it's just a really nice way for other countries to be able to take advantage of the learning that we've been able to purchase. The other thing that's really important is as you embark on the whole advanced analytics space, you got to think about how do I create a roadmap, right? Where do I want to be with advanced analytics in 3 to 5 years, right? So how do I think about setting that up? So one of the important things, in the very beginning is establish a vision. What is it that I want to be in, 3 to 5 years? Is it around that I want to make sure that I can, answer questions more real time, make smarter decisions? Is that my ultimate vision? Do I want to make sure that I'm driving share performance, And so create that and develop a framework to say, how am I going to get there? What are the things that I've got to implement over the next couple of years to really be successful at driving those insights into action and really improving my overall performance, right? So you think about a framework. What are the things that I need to do? I have to make sure that I'm setting up training. I want to make sure that I'm looking at the markets that matter most. And then, you set that up and you think about, how do I make sure that I'm building credibility and expanding those insights, right? So if I'm doing them right now in 5 markets, I want to show the proof in the pudding, right? So if I say, we've got these recommendations, I've implemented these recommendations, I look at year 2 and I start to see a nice improvement in my ROI, or I see that my volume's gone up, that makes everybody feel really comfortable, right? Like, these MMMs work. I feel good about them, and I want to continue to leverage those because they seem to be working for the organization. And it helps us, think about expanding the insights, right? So as I get better at the MMMs, we're thinking about new questions that we want to uncover, so you're getting at more granularity. Again, very important. And then finally, how do I make sure that I'm embracing, and embedding to create an ROI mindset? So like having it become part of the DNA of the organization. So everybody really is talking about the fact that, I know that media is my number one driver. I know that, we, right now we can't walk away from TV. It's, it got a lot of reach for us, right? So, and it drives a lot of volume for us. So TV is still king, distribution is still king, but it's really nice when folks around the organization are talking about the most important things that are driving our business. The other space I just wanted to kind of touch upon, with MMMs, you do get a little bit of information on price and promo, right? But when you really want to run and get a deep dive on price and promotions, you want to do a price and promotion study. And really, why do we want to do pricing? Why is it important? Because it's one of the biggest levers that we can have that help us, think about how do I improve profitability? One of the things we always think is, oh my God, I've got a profit target that I can't hit. I got to take pricing actions, right? Well, how can you take pricing actions, that aren't going to negatively really impact your sales performance? How do I make sure that I'm driving top line growth? How do I make sure that I'm doing the things that I'm doing are really helping me win in market? That I want to make sure that I continue to gain share. How do I evaluate my pricing strategies that I currently have in the marketplace? How do I, how do I evaluate the impact of change, right? The different pricing scenarios. What kind of impact will it have on me? What happens if competition doesn't follow and I do it by myself? What kind of volumetric impact? So there's a lot of good things that you can get from price and promo on top of what you do in your MMMs. How it works, it's really similar to MMMs, right? It's a regression-based model. It pulls in 2 to 3 years of historical information, on all the different pieces. It really analyzes things at the SKU level or the PPG level, which is a promoted price group. So if you consistently have a set of products that you price the same and you promote the same, that's considered a promoted price group. Okay, and it will look at those individual components. And what it does is it takes those and it really isolates your price elasticity, right? So, and your price elasticity is just what is the overall volume impact? For every % increase that I take in price or decrease, what's the impact on my sales performance? The really cool thing about the new price elasticity studies is it'll take this stuff, right, and you'll get a total elasticity number of, say, it's 1.5. Now, not only do you get that 1.5, but it breaks it apart to say, of that 1.5, how much is coming from my own price point? So do I have to be mindful of my own price thresholds? Maybe I can't go over a $1.99 price point. That will be really detrimental to me. How much is coming from my gap versus a competitor, right? So, I always thought I should be at, pricing parity with somebody. And, is that really right? And within that space, if it's gap, how big is it? How important is it? Who is it within that thing that says gap's important to me, that I got to be mindful of? What are the right competitors that I should really be considering when I'm thinking about gap performance? And then the last piece, so 3 pieces, is how much is coming from when I make a change, to one of my SKUs, how it impacts the rest of my franchise, right? So how do I have to be mindful of that gap from the rest of my franchise too? And in the old days, you only got that big total number, and you would be making these decisions. And now that you got the beauty of the granularity, you make completely different decisions now. Because now oh my God, it's really more about my price point that matters, or no, it's about the gap. And a lot of times, what we have seen, just overall, is most times we've got the gap wrong. So what's the right index? I thought I should be parity priced, and you know what? I shouldn't be. I should be at a 90 or an 80 index, or I should be at a 120 index. Not only did I have that wrong, but I also had the competitor wrong. So it really helps you, truly understand the granularity. We just talked about that in terms of the overall interactions. It's really important. So it really does help you understand who really matters to you and who really negatively impacts you. And then, just about the net impact to the franchise. I kind of talked about that. Like if I make different shifts, how is it going to drive my overall volume? The nice thing, because of that level of granularity, it does really help you make decisions. I've been told I have to make a price increase. I have to take a 5% price increase. Well, if I can look at the individual components, I can see that maybe there's certain certain pack sizes that aren't as, elastic, and I've got the opportunity to take pricing on a couple sizes, but I can't do it everywhere. And before, if you didn't look at it at this level, you were making broad stroke decisions. How can pricing help me? Again, here's just some of the questions that you can think about. I need to improve profits. Do I have pricing power? Can I take a price increase? So you run these simulations to say, what if, I do take that? What kind of impact is it going to have on my brand performance? What if competition doesn't follow me or they do follow me? I'm losing share to competition. Should I compete on price? What is it that I need to do? Should I be taking a price decline? Do I need to have lower depth of discounts to be more competitive? You'll understand all that kind of stuff. What are the right depth of discounts? If I'm always promoting at a 20 or 30 or 40% discount, mostly in the 40% range, these will help you understand, what? I'm not getting that much more volume when I go to 40%. I'm better off at the 30% range, right? Getting rid of those 40% ones, putting maybe more into the 30, and being able to do things more profitably. This is just looking at, the different types of business questions that we can answer. So again, understanding the everyday price impact, right? What are my pricing strategies, right? And again, it's really important because a lot of times you find not only did I have, like I said, my pricing strategy's been off. I've had the wrong competitor in mind, and I've had the wrong index. So it can really help you adjust that, as well as where is it that I need to think about where I can actually take price increases to help improve profitability. I can't do it across an entire line. I have to do it against certain pack sizes. So it just gives you a little more wiggle room. We talked about the understanding the promo impact. So again, what are the right depth of discounts? What are the right promotional packs that are driving the most volume for me? So all those things really help you optimize your spend. Most times, what we spend in below the line in trade, it's really, really a significant amount. So we really want to make sure that we can optimize that. Okay. So in summary, we all spend a lot of money, right, in media and in store. We're all under pressure to make sure that we either reduce spend or that we're improving profit and share, right? Because we don't have endless amounts of money, so we really have to figure out how do we optimize that spend. It's really important that you guys think about embracing these tools because they really, 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 I can't stress enough, really, can help you in this space in terms of how do I, make sure that I've got the right media mix in mind. How do I make sure that I've got the right in-store mix to really optimize my performance? So the things I just wanted you guys to consider, right, is about developing that analytics roadmap. So thinking about how am I going to proceed in this whole space over the next 2, 3, 5 years. Where do I want to be when I grow up? At the end result, do I really want to say, I'm going to be able to make smarter, faster decisions in real time? That's my goal. Leverage your strategic partners. They're really, really important for you to help train your cross-functional folks, again, to help drive insights into action, right? Because you want to build credibility of the tool. So rely on their expertise to help you train folks. Training is really important. We do training all the time. You can think about creating little e-learning so people can click on, an hour snippet on, if I just want to understand the fundamentals on MMMs or price and promo, I can go to a resource library and just get a refresher. It's been a while since I've done an MMM. I just want to really understand the basics. Showcase early wins, right, to help build credibility. So the fact that as you start to do these MMMs and you see results, make sure you're bringing them back to senior management so they can see, I made my adjustments to my media plan. I've lowered my weekly weights. I've extended, the absolute number of weeks on air, and I am starting to see an improvement in my share performance. My brand awareness numbers are going back up. So there's a whole bunch of metrics that you can actually leverage if you don't even run like an MMM, as often to monitor that. But you do see other indicators like your brand awareness metrics going up that you can showcase to the organization to say this stuff is working. And then finally, it's just about changing the mindset of the organization to drive adoption, and thinking about things and having it become part of our DNA. That these tools can really help us, but it's a journey and it's a struggle, but it's all about that constant reinforcement and creating like the most important learnings. So whether it's the meta learning and making sure you take that back to senior management, some of the things that we try to do is, create a lot of, here's maybe the top 5 or top 10 things that we need to do. Again, I had mentioned, whether it's continuity, and that's really important, or distribution is king, but people are always, they're top of mind. So when they're thinking about plans, they're thinking about these guidelines. So thank you. That was my little spiel. Now it's time for any other questions or whatever. Yep.
I have a question about when you mentioned the price and promo model. In understanding the depth of the promotions, what is the period of time to which a promotion should run for the model to calibrate properly versus, so if you're running discounts at 40%, 30%, how long do you need that discount to run for contiguously versus how long is the business actually running for?
Yeah, well, everything's done on a weekly, right? We get all weekly information, so we can look at all the weekly events, and a lot of times some things typically are only in and out they're a week, right? So what it will tell you, the model will tell you, is how effective they are at each one of those depth of discounts. It'll also help you think about the frequency of these things. So, if I ran something and I say I had a 40% discount and I typically did them for a week, and now I've extended it for 2 weeks, but I started to see that the volumes fell off, one of the recommendations might be, you don't really need to do the 2 weeks. Do it for the 1 week, get the big bag, and move off. So they can start to see, they'll see the volume, whether it's falling off or not, to help make those recommendations in terms of timing, the length of time, as well as the frequency. Yep.
I have a fun question. I wanted to ask it last week, but I left early. What was your favorite Super Bowl ad and why?
If not including your own.
No, but
What was your own? What was your own? Which one did you work
we had it was a toothpaste, Colgate toothpaste. It was like at the really end, and it was a guy standing in front of a sink brushing his teeth, and he had the water running. And it was it wasn't about us and selling our toothpaste. It was make sure you turn your water off because we've got water scarcity issues all around the world. So
You were really selling toothpaste.
no,
Kind of.
no. It really, all the message truly was make sure, it was about, all the millions of gallons of water you can save by just turning your water off while you brush your teeth. So, I found it to be, I was proud of the commercial, because I really felt like it was giving a public message.
It was unique in that spot as well.
Yeah.
Really?
It's one of the few ads not to push a product.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. This year I was kind of like, nothing really stood out for me. They were just, I can't. All I remember is there were a lot of car ads, which I was surprised at. There weren't, and I was all ready for that tearjerker for the Budweiser. You know how they always have a tearjerker, and you're like, they didn't have that. So I think I was just amazed at how many more car ads there were. And then I think there were a lot more too, and just, typically for, like, in the whole...
Pizza, beer,
Yeah.
cars.
Yeah. But there was
Puppies.
Skittles.
What was your favorite one?
I like the Skittles one for some reason.
Oh.
Really?
I am a sugar junkie.
Okay.
I loved it. It's kind of cool. Artsy. It was more artsy.
Yeah, you're right. It was
Yeah,
awesome.
Aerosmith and Puppy Monkey Baby kind of creeped me out.
Yeah,
I really didn't
that was
like
creepy.
The what?
The PayPal one with the new money, old money.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, I feel like that, like,
Made you think.
yeah.
Can I ask a question? You mentioned looking at mixed MMMs globally. Within the same category, do you see a lot of variation globally when you do those studies?
Yeah, well, again, the meta learnings, the nice thing is there's differences, right? And especially in like the promotion space, right? Because the marketplace dynamics. In the media space, there are a lot of commonalities. And that's why it's really good when you do them and you can't afford to do them in some of the smaller markets, you take advantage of the meta learning to help guide those media plans. because there is a lot of consistency, which is really good. Unless you're in a market that's, where there's a ton of, digital that's happening, and you need to, adjust your mix, then you'll see some variation. But there is a lot of similarities.
In terms of the data inputs, what's the balance between macro kind of data like GRPs per week versus more granular data that you may be pulling in from individuals that are contributing to different panels or whatever sources?
Yeah, well, granularity is really important, so that's why we look at all weekly level information, right? So it all depends on the different types of business questions you're trying to answer and what's really been put into your media spend, and how you can then talk to your strategic partners to say, what other components can I actually pull in if I want to understand that impact on sales? But we try, the more granularity and differences that you have, variation, helps inform the models.
Tyler, you had a question?
Yeah, this going back to the last question, I think this might have been right on the edge of it as well. But would you use those meta learnings to actually inform your media strategy in a new or emerging market, like where there might not be much data?
Yeah.
For like your
Absolutely. Because what else do you have, right? So why not rely on something where you develop these models, to help inform different types of strategies? It's a really good way to say it's a great starting point, and if it's a new market to me, one of the things you can do, I think I had mentioned this, is, I've got competition that's out there already. I might also want to consider running an MMM for my competitive brands to understand what they're doing in that particular market, so that I can really understand what are the right triggers. So it's a combination of taking advantage of your meta learning to help inform your media strategies, or potentially running an MMM on your competitors that are in that marketplace already, so that you can really see what's driving their business in country A, B, or C.
Is the MMM model that you run in Colgate a proprietary model, or is it a third party model?
Well, you own the information. You own the rights to it. Everybody does, because you pay for that, right? So those are your own coefficients, those little things that help, associate, what kind of volume you get for each one of those. So yes, we own them. We don't, everywhere I've ever worked, we've always made sure that we relied on a strategic partner to help, drive those insights into action and to, make the adjustments to those types of models. But we own them.
So for a company that's a new startup as a CPG product, which doesn't have the resources to have an analytics team, what could they possibly, aside from, obviously they have to build their own factor analysis regression models, but if they don't have that, is there anything on the market that they can use to do this analysis?
Again, I would take the time to talk to some of the strategic partners that are out there and have them think about how they can help you. You don't have big budgets, or you don't have a big team to help analyze this stuff, but what they can do, even if you're just trying to understand, I've got a brand new product, I want to be able to, I'm thinking about putting all my advertising spend behind TV. So, in this industry, how important is TV? So again, looking at some competitive brands or whatever, running a model, to really understand what are those drivers and the right buttons that I should be pushing.
And I think that if we remember a few weeks back when we had Liz Raschke from Google, again, it will depend on what your spend is, and if you're in, purely a digital spend,
Yep.
you have options that are available, for example, through Google or other analytics providers that are going to, that'll be attribution based, but it will be within that particular media channel. It will not be as broad as what you've been talking about this morning.
Right.
Have you looked at any cognitive machine learning solutions around media mix modeling? I know from an IBM's perspective, we've been looking a lot at taking the Watson cognitive and applying it to marketing services and media mix modeling, because it takes the unstructured and structure, and then to your point about knowing the right questions to ask, taking those models and seeing what kind of cognitive engine turns around and asks that we wouldn't know to ask.
Yeah.
It's kind of like this new wave we're focused on. I'm wondering if you looked into that at
Yeah.
all.
We just started to, so it's definitely an area of interest.
It's a brand.
Yeah, it's,
Yeah.
it's a totally untapped market, right? So it's like, how do I really, to your point, how do I take that and really help inform this stuff? We haven't done it yet, but there's definitely an interest. Any other questions for me?
Well, Shelley, thank you so much
thanks,
for being
Chris.
here. We really
Appreciate it.
appreciate
Thanks, guys.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Great. Cool.
So, and as a reminder, and hopefully you may be able to join us our graduation ceremony. So again,
Just get out of the way.
our graduation ceremony is 2 weeks from today, March the 3rd. It will be in the evening, I think 5 p.m. Is that what we said? 5 p.m. At Turner offices in the Time Warner Center. Jasmine's helping it pull everything together, and we'll have a special part. Not only will Howard Schimmel, Chief Research Officer from Turner, be sharing his team's experience and all the great work that they're doing, but they very kindly have offered to give us tours of the Time Warner, the Media Lab. So you get to see some of the other things in action, like some of the neuroscience tools that will likely be a part of the spring session. So I'm I'm just sort of giving you a little peek into what's coming up in the future.
It's a movie trailer.
What's that?
It's the movie trailer.
Right, it's
Right.
the movie trailer.
This trailer's not been rated for public view.
I have not been rated for public use, and the NPAA does not want to take a look. But we want to thank everybody for being here this winter session, all about analytics. And as we said, we will be awarding certificates. And that certification test will be sent out to everybody Monday. Think of it as 20 questions, true or false, multiple choice, no essays. No essays. Don't have to worry about that. It's not like, a rewritten SAT. So it'll be very simple, very straightforward, and as we said, graded on a curve as well. But we really thank you for being here in person. We thank everybody who's watching us on Blue Jeans WebEx or is watching us on demand. We thank you for being as part of our video class. And we look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks at Turner offices at Time Warner. So thank you all very much. The lab is closed.